Right. Welcome back, everybody. Here we are getting ready for our next panel that's going to start in just one moment here. I'm really excited about this panel, and you'll soon see why. But we have Craig Rosen, who's the director of the Nevada STEM Networks manager, Southern Nevada STEM Regional Network, and he's with Desert Research Institute. It's a great pleasure to have Craig. It's amazing to hear about the work that has occurred throughout Nevada. And so I'll have Craig join me on the stage, and we're going to get started with an introduction and kind of break this down so we can learn a little bit more about how to implement and to share this work. All right. And I think Roy is sending him. Roy's in our backstage there. Here we go. Welcome, Craig. We have you here.
Hi, Kelly.
So it's so nice to have you with us here today. And I thought I gave your titles, but why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you entered this amazing world of STEM?
Yes, it's quite fascinating because it was not part of where I started. I started more in the informal education space. And I was doing work and consulting nationwide in the religious informal education space. And then I found my way to, I saw this posting, and I became executive director of the Las Vegas Science and Technology Festival. And that was my first entree into STEM. And it really opened my eyes to this world that I now live in and love. I ran that festival for a year, and it was great. You all should come out and experience it. It happens in around April, May every year. And then I found my way to the Desert Research Institute. So DRI is part of the Nevada system of higher education, and what happens at the Desert Research Institute is we have scientists working on environmental and applied science education, or applied science. And we have an Office of Education where I sit, and our job then is to translate that authentic science, the real world science, down to the K-12 level, and support the teachers of Nevada with tools and resources they need to bring science to life in their classroom. So I've been doing this STEM work now for about 10 years, and love it.
Oh, that's great. So talk a little bit about, I'm just so fascinated with the structure that Nevada has established with these STEM networks. So talk a little bit about that, but even more importantly, talk a little bit about the diversity of the state. So I'll have you start with that.
Yeah, Nevada's really an interesting state. We're quite a large state. Those of you who've come here, you probably come to the one street in our state, but it's much bigger than that, right? We're more than the Strip. Nevada has a little over 3 million, about 3.5 million people. About 2.2 million, 2.3 million are down in Las Vegas, Clark County area, and the rest are spread out throughout the rest of the state. So we have 3 population centers pretty much. Clark County, the big one. We have northwestern Nevada, which is Reno, Carson City area. And then we have what we call the rural areas, which is everything else, including Elko, which is our third biggest population area. But it takes about 7 hours to drive from Vegas to Reno. And within that 7-hour stretch, or maybe there's like 2 towns. So it's a real diverse rural state. And we realized that each of the population centers have different needs as well, right? There's the large employers are down here in Vegas. We have a real burgeoning tech community now happening up in our northwestern area. Tesla was brought in. We have Microsoft present here. We have Amazon has some land here. And then we have the rest of the state, which is a lot of mining. Nevada is one of the largest, in fact, I think it is the largest producer of gold in the country. So there's a lot of mining that goes on here too. So each of those population centers have different needs. But overall, Nevada has it's just a very diverse community. And there's a great need for STEM careers. We have about 73,000 STEM opportunities or jobs that will be open here in Nevada by 2026. And just to reach the national average, we need to have about 78,000 jobs just to reach the national average here in STEM. So there's a lot of opportunity that we see, and that's why the governor's office here in Nevada is focusing on STEM and really bringing STEM to life and ramping up STEM education.
So, Greg, talk about these STEM jobs a little bit. What do they look like? Because, again, you talk about the diversity of the state. You mentioned the mining. Talk about even in Vegas. I mean, what do those STEM jobs look like?
It's there's a lot of STEM jobs in Vegas. I mean, just think about the architecture alone in creating these mega resorts. So there's all the construction work that has to happen and all the things to support those construction workers. We are bringing in new technological companies. Haas Automotive is coming in to create a plant. Google has a presence. So there's the potential for even more companies to come in, right? Nevada has a great climate for business. And what we're lacking are the STEM workers to support that. And so the governor years ago said, all right, well, in order to bring and attract more of these companies, these tech companies, we need the STEM workforce to ramp up. And so that's why the governor created this Office of Science, Innovation, and Technology to really create those opportunities and to get our state thinking about STEM so we can diversify. Right? You all know during a pandemic, we were hit hard. Our state is still struggling because we're not diversified. We have the majority of our workers are hotel workers. And so what we're trying to do is change the thinking, right? The hotel workers of the future are going to be computer operators and robot programmers because we already have our first robotic bartender in one of our resorts. Well, we need 10 people to program that bartender and to repair the robots. So it's a changing workforce here in Nevada as well. So it's really exciting.
And so, I mean, that just, we met years ago when you participated in our summit. Talk about kind of that learning transfer because you really took it to heart. And it's always one of those things that I find fascinating is someone will come to a conference, a summit, and they're like, okay, now how do I take it back? How do I start this implementation? And so you took this back and look what you've done. I mean, this is amazing. So I want you to just share about that transfer.
Yeah, thanks, Kelly. So yeah, I actually got a scholarship from the Southwest Airlines scholarship to come to the conference, the STEM Leadership Alliance Summit, back in 2018. And I met some amazing people at that summit. I was just telling Kelly and Sal earlier that I sat next to Mike Kincaid from NASA, and we exchanged business cards, and I was like, wow, this is Mike Kincaid. But what I got from the conference truly was that opportunity to bring together all the different sectors that you created, right? You brought the nonprofit, you brought the education, you brought the business sectors together in one space, talking about how we're going to transform and change and work together. And so I loved what happened there at that conference, and that I wanted to replicate that in Nevada. And so I was able to write a grant and get some funding to do that and build this Nevada STEM network. And we created this summit based on my experiences at the Alliance Summit. I brought together government, business, education, and nonprofit informal education. They were all siloed, right? We know this, right? Our communities are siloed. And if we could bring people together in a space to talk and to share and to challenge one another, we can really create some change. And we're really excited about the change that's happening here in Nevada.
Yeah, it's another point that you talked about, and I think this is something for really the audience to understand, is as we see all of this growth here, And right now I'm in Arizona, if you cannot tell from my artifacts behind me here. But one of the crises that we have is this whole water issue. We have a lot of growth, a lot of potential, but Nevada, you've done a really nice job just kind of rethinking about this water supply. So you started to share it when we were talking backstage. I'd love for the audience to, also think about this, because it's not just the STEM alone that we're talking about with education. When we talk about job growth, we talk all about these things. There's a lot of other factors that play into it. So you have the environment, climate change, you have technology needs, you have housing, transportation, all of this, workforce development, reskilling, all of that. Talk a little bit just about some of those dynamics of what else the state has to think about when you think about that growth.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, water issues are huge, right? You all know that we have one of the driest areas in the country, but yet Nevada, specifically southern Nevada, has one of the most sophisticated water systems in the world. In fact, people come from all over the world. We have great partnerships with Australia and Israel, right? They study our climate and our system, our water systems, because it's just so advanced. We recycle pretty much every drop that goes down the drain, which is really it's kind of gross if you think about it, but the sophistication behind it and the cleaning process is really fascinating. Right? You may think that how can you build all these strip resorts and the water features and all this stuff when you live in this desert? But again, the way it's constructed is that all the water just circulates and recirculates, so we use it again, and we don't lose that much water. We bank more water than we use. But then you also speak about other issues that we need to be concerned about, like fire science. What's going on in the west Coast? Yeah. We really need to create this, and DRI is doing that. We have a lot of scientists working on fire issues right now. And then you mentioned transportation. Well, it's just going to continue to get worse as we put more and more cars on the road. But how do we shift that, right? And so Nevada became one of the first states to have a whole electric highway. And so we have electric highways all over the state now. And every single one of our hotels and places have the vehicle charging stations. And Tesla has a huge footprint here in Nevada, and they're really making some great strides and great changes. And Elon Musk and his boring system, I don't know if you heard about that, but the underground Tesla tunnels that are now going to be hopefully expanding beyond just the convention center and going to connect the whole strip and our airport together through these underground Tesla tunnels. So it's really exciting, some of the stuff that's going on here in Las Vegas, specifically in Nevada, and some of the technology that's already in place and yet to come.
Wow, that's great. So this is one of the things that I was so impressed during the pandemic, what the state was doing. Can you give a few examples from what was occurring in the regions and how STEM still stayed alive during the pandemic?
It was through these gray hairs that I got. No, it was tough, right? We launched the Nevada STEM Networks. It was January, right before the pandemic. And the thought was we're going to create these summits and we're going to create these networks of people meeting together in the different regions. And we sure had to punt, and we did. We were able to bring together all these different stakeholders virtually. And we began to build the structure. We gave out some grant dollars as well to some of the nonprofits here and the education partners to help them ramp up some of their STEM stuff. But it all led up to this summit idea where we were going to bring everybody together in person. And of course, that had to become virtual. And frankly, it was a huge success for us. We brought together over 300 people from the state, which during a pandemic, as this whole virtual world was happening, was pretty remarkable. And of course, we brought one of the finest keynotes in the country on STEM. Kelly was our keynote.
Thank you.
But you really set the stage and gave us a global perspective about what's going on in the world And then how does that relate to our little pocket of the world, and how we need to come together with our different stakeholders to listen to one another, again, and to challenge one another. I think the three pillars of our summit was to learn, to share, and to create. So we really had an opportunity to learn from you and with our partners, to share what's going on within our own stakeholder worlds and what are our needs and what are our wants, and then to create. And we ended up creating a strategic plan, a strategic direction for our state. And each region had their own strategic direction. They end up being pretty similar, but different pathways to get there. And
Could you go into that a little bit more detail? Could you talk about maybe just give an example of one of the regions and what the strategic direction looked like?
Sure. So Southern Nevada, I'll talk about Southern Nevada since that's where I reside. So our strategic direction, our ultimate outcome was that Southern Nevada has an educated, skilled, and diverse STEM workforce to meet the needs of STEM employers in the region. So that was the ultimate outcome, that we had this diverse workforce. And then we went backwards into that. Well, how do we get that? What do we need to do to get to that ultimate outcome? And, I'm going to can I share a document real quick?
Yeah.
I'll share our strategic direction. So in order to get to that ultimate outcome, we needed these intermediate outcomes to happen, right? We needed graduates who had the skills and the knowledge behind them to meet that's required by our STEM employers. And we needed them to have those soft skills as well, the collaboration, creativity, and communication pieces. Well, how do you get there? You need to have students from all backgrounds completing high-quality STEM programs. That was really important, right? Anybody can call themselves STEM or a STEM program, but what's a high-quality STEM program? Well, in order to get to that, we came up with these intermediate outcomes, and they focused around three areas. The first area was STEM equity. So how do we make sure that there's equity across the state for every student to engage in STEM programming? The second intermediate outcome, the second direction we took was STEM awareness, that we wanted to make sure that all Nevadans had an awareness of what the benefits of STEM education can bring. And that's, again, those are those like Taste of STEM. Those are the STEM the technology festivals. Those are the open houses that businesses can do and provide. Those are those fun activities to really get people thinking about STEM. And the third focus for us in our state to get to these ultimate outcome was to create high-quality STEM educational programming with knowledgeable educators and engaged business partners so that we can all work together throughout the state. And at the summit, we presented these intermediate steps, intermediate outcomes, and we challenged our participants. All right, well, now that we have these intermediate outcomes, what are the action steps we need to take in order to get to that? And we came up with this list of action steps that were, frankly, the summit was in October, so we're still in the process of going through these action steps and really building these pieces to support this long-term process to achieve our ultimate outcome. So I have this document. I think I shared it in the files here. If you wanted to download it, so you can have a chance. Everybody here can have a chance to see where we're headed here in Nevada.
Now that's great. And talk a little bit more just about in terms of, because one of the things that you did in the summit is you brought together these different organizations. Could you just name some of the organizations? Like, who did you bring to the table?
Yeah, so I was mentioning the stakeholders that we brought. So there was, we had some government people from all over the state. Our governor actually opened up the conference for us. So we had a lot of government people from various departments. We had education folks from everywhere from our Nevada Department of Education, superintendent's office, all the way down to individual school districts and teachers. We brought business partners together from all the different STEM business sectors. Energy was there. We had Tesla was there. We had some other big companies. I believe MGM was present as well. So we had a lot of business partners. And then we had our nonprofit and informal education partners. So those groups that are actually doing a lot of the boots on the ground work to support the formal education piece. So it was really exciting to hear, to have all these people in the same room listening to one another. And the three questions we posed to them to get them really to engage with one another. The first was, in 10 years from now, what would you hope to see as far as STEM in Nevada? So we asked them to kind of, in their own worlds and their own, again, we had them put on their hats from their stakeholder perspective. What do they hope to see as far as STEM in Nevada? And the second reflection question we had them think about was, what can your sector do to help support these intermediate outcomes? Through your lens and through your hat, what is it that you can do to support this? And the third question was really also enlightening. I think it was really even more important is, from your perspective, what do you think other stakeholders can be doing? So we really got them to dialogue with one another, like, all right, this is what we could do, but this is what we think you should be able to do, or you should do. And it got that amazing dialogue happening amongst the different stakeholders, which really proved to be very fruitful.
So how did business answer those three questions?
Great question. Business, of course, was all about workforce and building the future for workforce. That was their big 10-year plan. What they can contribute. Some of them thought about industry tours, again, for not only for professional development for teachers, but also for young people. Internships was another opportunity that was shared, apprenticeships, internships, and then money, contributions to some of these nonprofits who are doing some of the work to support all this process. And of course, then there was some finger pointing, right? The business world said, oh, well, education needs to respond faster. We need you to work faster at getting us what we need. That was really eye-opening for our education group to see, all right, well, business really does want to engage with us. They might not know how to engage with us because they think we're slow at coming through with this. And then the education part pointed back to the business and said, well, we don't know what skills you're looking for, what skills we need to train our young people for. So there was that real give and take dialogue that was happening.
And I think what's so interesting, and just for the audience to know, is that I was with a major corporation for 25 years, and so I understand kind of that business mindset. But one of the things that I think is so fascinating is how, when business really talks about education, oftentimes they talk about the curriculum. So if we have the right curriculum, then everything's going to fall into place. And I think the piece that we really come from is about building the capacity. It's about having those conversations that connects business to education, to realize that just because you bring in, whatever you may think it might be a tool such as a laptop. Oh, everything's going to be fine. It's more than that. And so I think it's refreshing when there starts to be those conversations that occur to say, I need to know what you need. What are the skills that you're looking for so we can adequately prepare, and don't come back to us and just say, here's the answer, and try to come up, but instead really trying to solve those issues together in a collaborative manner. So it's kind of that backward mapping there. Talk a little bit more about, what's next? Where is this going? Because there's some changes that have happened, but it's not a negative; it's a positive. So, talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So this effort, the STEM Nevada STEM Networks effort, started as a grant, an appropriations grant, actually, from the legislature through the Governor's Office of Science, Innovation, Technology. Year 2 of that grant, of course, the pandemic hit and funding was cut from the program. So we were kind of, oh my gosh, we created this, now what? And the Governor's Office of Director, Brian Mitchell, he said, well, this is really important for us, for our state, and he found some money within his budget to keep it going. Again, from the work that we did and the success that we've been having and these conversations that are moving forward, it is now become embedded in the Governor's Office of Science, Innovation, Technology. And starting in July, they have a new office within their office who is going to really just be focusing on this effort to continue to build these networks and to solidify and bring people together.
Oh, that's wonderful. It's exciting. It's an exciting transformation to see how one state has really taken this to heart and not just allow it to so-called become stale, and just kind of sit on a shelf, but to continue to move and to improve that. So this is a question, just, if you're somewhere and you really want to, whether you're in a community, a city, or a state, or how do you start this? How do you get everyone to kind of come on board? How do you do it?
Oh man! Well, first you have to have that passion, right? So I imagine everybody here in the audience is passionate about STEM, or else you wouldn't be here. You need to also have not be afraid to network and to talk to people, and to listen to people, because everybody has an idea of what they want, but very often we don't listen to their ideas and share those opportunities with one another, right? So if we can just take the time, sit in a room, bring people together and listen to one another, and then from there figure out, all right, well, what synergies do we have? What opportunities do we have to move forward and work on together? Then that's how I would say you build this network. It's just taking your passion, sharing your passion, and being open to listening and exploring, and working with those other stakeholders who have similar passions.
And I love that you share that, because I think back to some of my early work that I was doing and working with a particular community. And one of the first things we did is we kind of brought everybody together who touched education. So whether it was business that was involved, whether it was the nonprofits or the out-of-school providers, it was the in-school providers as well. So you had the superintendent, the teachers association / union was involved in that. But we brought everyone to the table and we had a conversation. But one of the first things we had to do is we had kind of a venting setting. And so because there were so many parents and so many community members that were just so frustrated because they felt like, oh, nobody's listening, or we're doing the same thing over and over and over again. And so we just had to get that out there. And once that started to kind of clear the air, that's when the real work began. And it sounds like a very similar process in terms of, it's like people have to kind of rally and get together and really start to hone in and focus on that. So,
and to know that you're just one piece of the puzzle, and that it takes all the pieces to build the puzzle. And your sector, your organization, your company can contribute in a certain way, but you also have needs. And so don't be afraid to share those needs and to point out to other sectors and companies, well, you should probably be doing this too, or we need you to help us with this in order for us to move things forward. So it's that give and take. And that was what was really exciting, that when we had that dialogue to share, again, what what your company can do to move the STEM agenda forward, and then what do you think other sectors should be doing? It was really enlightening to see.
Yeah, that's great. And talk a little bit just about the Desert Research Institute. What's the work that they're doing, and are they primarily involved in STEM? Talk a little bit more broadly about the work that happens there.
I love talking about DRI because we have some great scientists who are working day in and day out to solve some of the greatest challenges here on the planet, including climate change. We're doing fire science, water quality, microplastics, a lot of stuff that we're exploring. So we're a soft-funded organization, so we're part of the Nevada system of higher education. We're part of the colleges and universities here in the state, but DRI, Desert Research Institute, doesn't get too much state funding. We have to go out and find our own grants and contracts to do the work that we're doing. And so each one of us, because of that, has that passion and that drive behind us to allow us to do this work. And we have this Office of Education as where I sit to translate all that amazing science, authentic science, real-world science stuff that's happening today, and share that love and share that information out to our teachers and support them. Right, a lot of our elementary school teachers are not science specialists. We know that. They're generalists. So how can a science research institute support them? What can we do to enrich their teaching? And so we offer curriculum. We offer these what we call green boxes as suitcases. You open up the suitcase and all the materials and the curriculum are inside that suitcase to do hands-on STEM learning in the classroom. So a teacher doesn't have to have too much background knowledge. We give it to them. They open up these suitcases. They get delivered anywhere in the state. Teachers can use them for 6 weeks, send it back to us when they're done, and we replenish and restock them and send them out again. So that's just one of the ways we support our teachers here in Nevada through these green box programs, which has really been exciting.
And you mentioned hands-on, and this came up as a question from the audience previously, just about with the pandemic, a lot of the hands-on became very difficult to do. Was there anything that was happening in Nevada to kind of continue to work and support families?
Yeah, we had quite a bit of pivoting and exciting stuff going on during a pandemic here in Nevada. We did a few virtual family education nights throughout the state, which was really good. We got a group of educators together to make those happen. We produced take-home STEM kits that we sent to schools, so teachers couldn't use our green boxes in class. So how did we then translate that? We gave them individual STEM kits that they can then distribute to their students for them to do this the hands-on stuff at home. I was just telling you the group earlier that I got a grant from NASA to create 5,000 STEM kits that are now being distributed through the library system here in Nevada, so we can really reach that diverse population. I called it NASA Ola because it's in the nod to Spanish, but it stands for Hands-On Learning Activities, NASA Ola, and it's being translated in Spanish as well. So it's a really exciting project.
Oh, I love that name. That's great.
Thanks. It was really
going to go throughout the entire state as well?
Yeah, all 88 libraries in the state are going to get NASA Ola kits to distribute to the 3rd through 5th grade students who come into the library. And these are NASA projects, NASA actual activities that I've worked on to retool and give them all the materials, hands-on materials that they can then do it in their homes.
Oh, that's great. So we had a presentation from NASA, and they were talking about kind of their resources and all of that. Could you just share a little bit how you became connected with NASA? I mean, I know you met Mike Kincaid, but what was kind of the next step after that?
I've always been fascinated with NASA and space science. So I remember the day that when our astronauts landed on the moon. I was actually at Disneyland that day, and they broadcast it on the big screen. I was I was a young kid, but I still remember it. And ever since then, I've just been fascinated by space science. And we have in our states the Nevada Space Grant that gets funding from NASA to really enrich some of the work that we're doing. And I landed a couple of Nevada Space Grants. And that just kind of allowed me to tiptoe into the NASA world a little deeper. And then I got to meet the celebrity of Mike Kincaid and got to talk to him. And then from there, we developed we piloted a NASA project in the state, a VR project with the Commercial Crew Program. And we were one of the pilot states for that I'm really proud of. We presented that at a national NASA conference. I got to go right before the pandemic, actually. Got to present that work. And then I just landed this new NASA OLA grant. So really, I am just fascinated with NASA and bringing NASA education into our state because, again, NASA is that cool piece that will allow for our students to think beyond what's happening here and into the stars.
Well, it seems like a lot of people agreed with you on NASA's that cool space there, so that's great.
I want the first Martian to be a Nevadan. That's kind of
right, there we go. That's fabulous there. So just any lasting thoughts, as we really think about this collaboration, building these networks, any other thoughts that you just want to share with the audience that we should know and what we should be thinking about as we move forward?
I would say that just don't give up, right? Just keep fighting the fight and use the passion that you all have to reach across the aisle, not to be afraid to talk to one another and to challenge one another, because we're all in this for the same reason, right? We all want a better society for ourselves and for our kids. If we come to that conclusion that we're all in this for the same reason, then there shouldn't be a reason for us to not cross the aisles and talk to one another and work collaboratively together to solve these big, challenging issues.
That's awesome. Well, Craig, it's always an absolute pleasure. Just kudos to you for all of the work that you've led and what you're leading moving forward here. You have certainly made a difference, not just for Nevada, but just the influence of what you're doing to share, not just nationally, but globally. So it's awesome. We definitely want to have you come out to Orlando, Florida for 2022. But I'm telling everybody right now, we're all going to be going to Nevada for one of the upcoming summits, because we're going to do some joint partnership work here with Craig and really get into the more weeds and see what's going on there. So on behalf of the STEM Leadership Alliance, I just want to thank you. It's always a pleasure. It's always an honor to share thoughts and to have a conversation. And I really love this, because this is kind of like when we have our phone conversations. It's a lot of that sharing.
Exactly.
This is great.
Well, thank you, Kelly. Thank you, everybody. And I look forward to seeing you all in person real soon.
Great. So everyone, kudos and applause to Craig here. As we now move into our next session, I'll ask everyone to kind of hop on and join. We're going to look at assessment and instruction. And if you recall at the very beginning, what did I say? I talked about how do we connect those dots. So we need to think as we go into this upcoming school year, we have a lot of assessments that we need to look at. So what did we learn? We're going to look at some of the national work that's been collected around the numeracy and literacy. How do we take that so that we can actually help to form our instruction for the upcoming school year? So with that, if you jump onto the agenda, you can go into what a digital assessment and structure provider learned from districts during COVID and the extended school closure. So with that, we'll see you in the next session. Thanks again, Craig.
Bye.
Bye.